NASA astrophysicist Tyler Cooper stared in disbelief at the impossible telemetry data streaming from the Voyager 3 probe, Earth's long-lost interstellar explorer that vanished 15 years ago and has now impossibly reappeared at the solar system's edge, transmitting a dire warning that could spell humanity's extinction. "This can't be right," Tyler muttered, his bloodshot eyes scanning the nonsensical readings and eerie artificial signal embedded in Voyager 3's impossible communique. The 35-year-old scientist had been hunched over his terminal for hours, unshaven face illuminated by the screen's glow, trying to make sense of the probe's ominous transmission. He jabbed the intercom button. "Director, you need to see this now. Voyager 3 is back and you won't believe what it's saying." Within minutes, the NASA facility was on lockdown as military vehicles rumbled through the gates. The Secretary of Defense strode into the command center, his face grim. "Cooper, this better be good. What the hell is going on?" Tyler took a deep breath. "Sir, Voyager 3 has returned from the void, and it's carrying a message from an alien race called the Komar. They claim a hostile species, the Zorath, is rampaging across the galaxy, annihilating everything in its path. And Earth is next." The Secretary blanched. "Are you certain this is authentic?" "The Komar say they concealed Voyager 3 to keep the Zorath from tracking it to us, but now they've sent it back as a warning, so we can prepare for invasion." As the message ended, I detected a massive object, likely their ship, warping away at impossible velocity. The room fell silent, the weight of the revelation sinking in. The Secretary squared his shoulders. "We have no choice but to assume this is real. As of now, we are at war. Cooper, I need you leading a crisis team to dissect every scrap of data from that probe. We need to learn everything we can about these Komar and Zorath, their technology, capabilities, weaknesses. Earth's survival depends on it." Just then, an ashen-faced aide burst in. "Sir, long-range sensors have picked up unidentified warships dropping out of jump space at the solar system's edge, a whole damn fleet of them." As alarms blared and the command center erupted into frenzied activity, Tyler felt a cold sense of dread wash over him. The battle for Earth's future had begun, and he held the key to humanity's last desperate hope. In the White House Situation Room, the President and his top advisors huddled around a large table, eyes glued to the screens displaying the alien ship's ominous positions. General MacArthur stood, his face grim as he delivered his report. "Mr. President, the unknown vessels have taken up positions in orbit around Earth. We've tried every frequency and protocol, but they refuse to respond to our hails. To make matters worse, they're actively jamming our long-range communications and sensors. We're effectively blind and deaf to the rest of the galaxy." The President leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "What about our defenses? Can we repel an attack?" MacArthur shook his head. "I'm afraid not, sir. Even with the technological leaps we've made thanks to the Voyager 3 data, our forces are severely outgunned. The Zorath ships are unlike anything we've ever seen." The Secretary of State cleared his throat. "Perhaps we could attempt to open a dialogue, negotiate a peaceful resolution." The President slammed his fist on the table. "Negotiate? Did you not hear the Komar's warning? If they're right about the Zorath, these bastards aren't here to talk. They're here to exterminate us." Just then, an aide burst into the room, a phone pressed to his ear. "Mr. President, I have an urgent message from Dr. Cooper at NASA. He says he's found something critical in the Voyager 3 data." The President snatched the phone. "Cooper, talk to me. What have you got?" Tyler's voice crackled through the speaker. "Sir, I've been analyzing the probe's readings and I think I've found a weakness in the Zorath ships. Their shields operate on a specific frequency. If we can get close enough to deliver a precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulse, it might disrupt their defenses long enough for our weapons to do some damage." The President's eyes widened. "Are you certain?" "It's our best shot, sir. Maybe our only shot." The President turned to MacArthur. "General, I want every available asset equipped with this EMP technology immediately. It's time to take the fight to these alien bastards." As the room erupted into a flurry of activity, An officer charged in, his face pale. "Sir, the Zorath ships, they're on the move. They're heading straight for our major cities." The president gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. "How long until they reach us?" "At their current speed, less than an hour." The room fell silent, the weight of the situation bearing down on them all. The president took a deep breath, his jaw set with determination. "Then we better move fast. The survival of our species depends on it." As the crisis escalated, the scene shifted to the United Nations headquarters in New York. The General Assembly was in session, with representatives from every nation present. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light filled the room. As the glare faded, a figure stood at the center of the assembly hall, Sci-Fi, the Komar ambassador. Gasps and shouts erupted from the delegates. Some leapt to their feet, pointing accusingly at Sci-Fi. "He's with the Zorath," one representative yelled. "This is a trick." Others pleaded for calm, their voices desperate. "Please, if you can help us, we need it now more than ever." Sci-Fi raised his hand, and a hush fell over the room. When he spoke, his voice seemed to reverberate with an ancient power. "People of Earth," he began, "the Komar have watched your world for centuries, ever since we first detected your radio signals in the void. We have seen you grow, learn, and struggle. In you, we see the potential for great good, but also for great destruction, the same forces that nearly tore our own civilization apart long ago." He paused, his eyes scanning the rapt faces of the delegates. "We had hoped to meet you under better circumstances, but the Zorath invasion has forced our hand. The Komar will share our technology and knowledge to aid in your defense, but even with our help, the odds are against you. The Zorath are conquerors, destroyers of worlds. They have erased entire species from existence." A palpable fear gripped the assembly. Sci-Fi's voice grew urgent. "To survive, you must fight as one. Every nation, every human united against this threat. It is your only hope." As he finished speaking, a shadow fell across the building. Screams rang out as people rushed to the windows. A massive Zorath ship hovered over the city, blotting out the sun. Panic erupted. Delegates ran for the exits, shoving each other in their haste to escape. But Sci-Fi remained still, a glowing orb appearing in his outstretched hand. In a flash, he vanished, taking the orb with him. A second later, a beam of searing energy shot from the Zorath ship, smashing into the UN building. The headquarters collapsed in a roar of fire and debris, a symbol of Earth's fading hope. Back at NASA's Crisis Command Center, Tyler Cooper wiped sweat from his brow as he hunched over a workbench, soldering components onto a satellite circuit board with shaking hands. Around him, a team of scientists and engineers worked frantically to integrate the EMP technology into every available spacecraft and satellite. The command center buzzed with urgent chatter and the clacking of keyboards. Giant screens displayed harrowing images of Zorath ships raining destruction on cities across the globe. London, Tokyo, Moscow. One by one, the world's capitals fell under the onslaught. "New York is gone," a ashen-faced technician reported, his voice cracking. "The Zorath just wiped it off the map." Tyler gritted his teeth, fighting back despair. They were losing this war and losing it fast. But he refused to give up, not while there was still a chance, however slim. Suddenly an alert flashed on his computer terminal. Heart pounding, Tyler opened the message. It was from Sci-Fi. The Komar's avatar flickered on the screen. "Dr. Cooper, I have vital information that may turn the tide of this conflict. I'm transmitting schematics for a quantum resonance cannon, a weapon capable of penetrating the Zorath shields." Tyler's eyes widened as he scanned the complex blueprints. This was it, the miracle they needed. But his hope faded as he read the specifications. "These materials, they're incredibly rare. We don't have them." Sci-Fi nodded gravely. "They can be found in only one location on your world, a remote mine in the Siberian tundra. You must secure them at any cost." Tyler immediately relayed the information to the president. Within minutes, the order was given. An elite special forces team would infiltrate the mine and retrieve the materials, no matter the risk. As the soldiers geared up for the mission, loading pulse rifles and strapping on armor, Tyler delved deeper into the Voyager 3 data, desperate for any advantage. That's when he found it. A star map, buried in the probe's memory banks. With growing horror, he realized what he was seeing. Dozens of star systems, each marked with a grim annotation. Species 4421, terminated. Species 8123, terminated. A chill ran down Tyler's spine. Earth was just one dot among many, a tiny speck in the Zorath's path of galactic conquest. Even if they somehow repelled the invasion here, there was no guarantee the Zorath wouldn't return with an even larger fleet to finish the job. Tyler's mind raced. The quantum resonance cannon was powerful, yes, but what if it could be more than just a defensive weapon? What if they could use it to strike back at the heart of the Zorath Empire itself, to end their reign of terror once and for all? It was a desperate gambit, but what choice did they have? As alarms blared and the command center shook from distant explosions, Tyler began frantically running simulations, searching for a way to turn humanity's last hope into its ultimate salvation. In the skies over Siberia, Captain Jake Maverick Henderson gripped the controls of his stealth aircraft, his knuckles white under his gloves. Behind him, his team of elite Special Forces soldiers checked their weapons and gear, preparing for the mission ahead. 2 minutes to drop point, Maverick said into his headset. Remember, our objective is to secure those materials at any cost. Earth is counting on us. As they neared the remote mine, the aircraft's sensors lit up with warnings. Zorath ground troops were already in position, their energy weapons trained on the approaching human vessel. Looks like they were expecting us, Sergeant Vasily Petrov growled from the co-pilot's seat. This is going to be one hell of a fight. Maverick gritted his teeth and pushed the throttle forward. Then let's give them one. The aircraft swooped low, skimming over the snow-covered landscape. The Zorath opened fire, their blast sizzling through the air. Maverick jinked and weaved, evading the barrage, while his gunner returned fire with the ship's pulse cannons. As they reached the drop zone, Maverick yanked back on the stick, bringing the aircraft to a hover. "Go, go, go!" he yelled. The Special Forces team leaped from the ramp, their boots crunching into the snow. Immediately they were engulfed in a fierce firefight. The Zorath warriors were physically imposing, their armor bristling with advanced weaponry, but the humans were no slouches. Armed with the latest EMP rifles and tactical gear, they held their own against the alien onslaught. Maverick led from the front, his weapons spitting blue pulses of energy as he charged forward. Beside him, Sergeant Petrov laid down covering fire, his aim precise and deadly. But the Zorath kept coming, their numbers seemingly endless. A blast caught Petrov in the chest, sending him sprawling into the snow, his armor smoking. "Vasily!" Maverick yelled, rushing to his friend's side. Petrov coughed, blood flecking his lips. "I'm hit bad, Cap. You have to leave me." Maverick shook his head. "Not a chance. We're getting you out of here." But Petrov grabbed his arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "No, the mission, it's more important. You have to go now." Maverick hesitated, torn. But he knew Petrov was right. With a final squeeze of his friend's shoulder, he stood and rallied his team. "Push forward. We have to reach that mine." They fought their way through the Zorath lines, leaving a trail of alien bodies in their wake. At last they reached the mine entrance, blasting through the heavy doors with shaped charges. Inside, they found themselves in a vast underground complex, filled with strange technology that pulsed and glowed with an eerie light. It was clearly of Kyomar design, far beyond anything the humans had ever seen. As they pushed deeper into the facility, searching for the rare materials needed for the quantum resonance cannon, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a Zorath commander, his armor adorned with glowing sigils of rank. "Foolish humans," he rasped in heavily accented English. "You have no idea what you've stumbled into." Maverick trained his rifle on the commander. "We know enough. This place has the materials we need to beat you." The commander laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You really think the Kyomar are your allies? They've been playing you all along. This base, these materials—" It's all part of their plan. Maverick's finger tightened on the trigger. What plan? To weaken us, to let you humans do their dirty work. Then, when both our races are exhausted, they will swoop in and claim the spoils. The commander spread his hands. But it doesn't have to be this way. Stand down, let us take this base, and the Zorath will leave your world in peace. Maverick hesitated, his mind racing. Could he trust this alien? The materials in this base could be Earth's only hope. But what if the commander was telling the truth? Before he could decide, a blast from a Zorath weapon struck the cavern wall behind him. The entire complex shuddered as cracks raced along the ceiling. "Cave in!" one of his soldiers yelled. "We have to get out of here!" Maverick cursed, realizing his chance to secure the materials was lost. "Fall back, double time!" They ran, dodging falling rocks and debris as the mine collapsed around them. They barely made it back to the surface, leaping into their waiting aircraft just as the ground gave way beneath them. As they flew away, Maverick looked back at the ruins of the mine, his heart heavy. They had failed. Earth's last hope had been buried under a mountain of rubble. A weak cough drew his attention. It was Petrov, slumped in the back of the aircraft, barely clinging to life. Somehow, against all odds, he had managed to drag himself out of the battle zone and to the extraction point. Did we get it?" he whispered. Maverick shook his head. "No, the mission was a bust, and worse, I think we've been played. The Komar, they're not what they seem." Back at NASA headquarters, Tyler Cooper listened to Maverick's report with growing horror. The revelation of the Komar's deception hit him like a punch to the gut. "My God," he breathed. "We're fighting a war on two fronts, against the Zorath, and against the very aliens we thought were our saviors." He looked up at the screens, at the images of Zorath ships raining destruction on Earth's cities. Humanity had never seemed so alone, so vulnerable. But even in that moment of despair, Tyler felt a flicker of determination. They would find another way. They had to. Earth would not go quietly into the night. The fight, he realized, was only just beginning. In the Oval Office, the President sat at the head of the conference table, his face drawn and haggard. Tyler Cooper and General MacArthur flanked him, their expressions equally grim. "The Komar have betrayed us," the President said, his voice tight with anger. "We trusted them, and they led us into a trap." Tyler leaned forward, his elbows on the table. "Sir, I think I have an idea. The Voyager 3 probe, we might be able to use it as a weapon against the Zorath." The President frowned. "How so?" "The probe's antimatter power core. If we can lure the Zorath fleet close enough and then detonate it, the explosion could take out a significant portion of their ships." General MacArthur shook his head. "But we'd be destroying the probe, losing any chance of gathering more data from it." The President was silent for a long moment, weighing the options. Outside, the distant sound of explosions echoed as the Zorath ships continued their assault. "Do it," he said finally. "We're out of time and options. If this can buy us even a fighting chance, it's worth the sacrifice." Tyler nodded, already rising to put the plan into motion. But before he could leave, the door burst open, and an aide rushed in, his face pale. "Sir, a massive Komar ship just appeared in orbit. They're requesting to speak with you." The President exchanged a look with his advisors. "Put them through." The large screen on the wall flickered to life, revealing a familiar face. Sci-Father, the Komar ambassador, who had seemingly perished in the attack on the UN. "Mr. President," Sci-Father said, inclining his head, "I apologize for the deception. My death was necessary to carry out a critical mission." "You have a lot of explaining to do," the President growled. "I do. Not all Komar agree with the actions of our leadership. A rebel faction has been working to stop this war. I have brought a fleet of our most advanced ships, piloted by Komar, loyal to the cause of peace. We are here to fight alongside you against the Zorath." As if to punctuate his words, the screen split, showing a massive fleet of sleek, powerful-looking Komar vessels moving into formation around the Earth. Sci-Father held up a glowing container. A peace offering, the rare materials you need to build the quantum resonance cannon. The president stared at the screen, his mind racing. Could they trust the Komar, after everything that had happened? But with the Zorath fleet bearing down on them, what choice did they have?
Tyler, the president said, begin construction of that cannon immediately, and General, coordinate with the Komar rebels, integrate them into our battle plan.
As the room erupted into urgent activity, the president turned back to the screen. I hope you're sincere, Sire Father, because if this is another trick, if you betray us again, there won't be a force in this universe that can save you. Sire Father met his gaze unflinchingly. I stake my life and the future of my species on this alliance. Together we will stand against the darkness, or together we will fall. The transmission ended, leaving the president staring at a blank screen. The die was cast. The pieces were in motion. All that remained was the final, desperate gamble for the fate of Earth and the galaxy itself. In the frenetic chaos of the NASA Command Center, Tyler Cooper hunched over his terminal, his fingers flying across the keyboard as lines of alien code streamed across the screen. Around him, a team of scientists and engineers worked with manic intensity, assembling components and running simulations for the quantum resonance cannon. Suddenly Tyler froze, his eyes widening. Holy shit, he breathed. I don't believe it. He tapped a few commands, double-checking the data. There was no mistake. The Voyager 3 probe had encountered another alien race before the Komar, a species called the Eldari, and they had been fighting the Zorath for centuries. Tyler dug deeper into the probe's memory banks, his heart pounding. There, schematics for an Eldari technology that could disrupt the Zorath's hive mind communication, effectively rendering their ships inoperable. But the data was incomplete. The Eldari had been wiped out before they could fully deploy the technology. Tyler's mind raced. If they could integrate the Eldari tech into the quantum resonance cannon. He opened a comm channel. Sire Father, I need your help. We found something in the Voyager 3 data that could change everything. Minutes later, a team of Komar engineers materialized in the lab, their alien features illuminated by the glow of holographic displays. They pored over the Eldari schematics, conversing with Tyler in rapid-fire bursts of technical jargon. It could work, they concluded, but they needed more time they didn't have. On the Komar stealth ship, Maverick checked his pulse rifle for the 100th time. Beside him, Sergeant Petrov sat in grim silence, his face pale beneath layers of bandages. You don't have to do this, Vasily, Maverick said quietly. No one would blame you for sitting this one out. Petrov shook his head. Not a chance, Cap. I'm seeing this through to the end. Maverick clasped his friend's shoulder. He knew there would be no talking him out of it. The ship shuddered as it approached the Zorath flagship, the massive vessel looming against the backdrop of the raging battle. Earth and Komar rebel forces clashed with the Zorath fleet in a dizzying display of weapons fire and exploding ships. 30 seconds to breach, the pilot reported, her voice tense. Maverick and his team readied their weapons, adrenaline surging through their veins. This was it, the moment of truth. The ship punched through the flagship's hull, and they were in, charging through the breach into the heart of the enemy vessel. Alarms blared, and Zorath warriors swarmed to meet them, their weapons spitting deadly energy. Maverick and his team fought like demons, carving a path of destruction through the ship's corridors. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had the element of surprise, and nothing left to lose. They blasted their way into the control room, the doors exploding inward in a shower of sparks and twisted metal, and there, waiting for them, was the Zorath commander. "I've been expecting you," he rasped, his voice dripping with malice. Maverick leveled his rifle at the alien's head. "It's over. Surrender and we'll spare your life." The commander laughed, a harsh grating sound. "You fool, you think you've won? You've already lost." He raised his hand and a holographic display flickered to life. A countdown. "This ship is set to self-destruct. In minutes it will explode, taking you and your pathetic allies with it. Maverick's finger tightened on the trigger. He could end this now, put a pulse blast through the bastard's skull. But if the commander was telling the truth about the self-destruct... He made the call. Petrov, Xiao, see if you can disable the sequence. Hernandez, watch their backs. The rest of you with me. We're getting the hell out of here. They split up, racing against the clock. Maverick led his group back through the ship, fighting every step of the way. They had to get out, had to warn the fleet. Behind them, Petrov and the others worked frantically at the control panels, trying to hack the Zorath systems. The countdown ticked lower, each second an eternity. Maverick's team burst into the hangar bay, commandeering a Zorath shuttle. They piled in, Maverick's hands flying over the unfamiliar controls. The engines roared to life, and they rocketed out of the bay into the maelstrom of the battle. "Tyler," Maverick shouted into his comm, "the flagship is set to blow. You have to fire the cannon now." Back at NASA, Tyler's blood ran cold. The cannon wasn't ready. They needed more time to integrate the Eldari technology. But time had just run out. He looked to Sire-Father, saw the same grim realization in the alien's eyes. "Do it," the Komar said. "Fire the cannon, it's our only chance." Tyler nodded. His fingers danced across the control panel, initiating the firing sequence. The cannon hummed to life, energy building within its core. On the flagship, Petrov slammed his fist against the console in frustration. The Zorath encryption was too strong, the system too alien. They couldn't stop the countdown. He turned to his comrades, saw the acceptance in their eyes. They had known from the moment they volunteered for this mission that they might not make it back. "It's been an honor," Petrov said, his voice steady. "See you on the other side." The countdown reached 0, and the flagship exploded in a blinding flash of light, a miniature sun blooming in the void of space. The shockwave slammed into the surrounding ships, friend and foe alike, tossing them like toys in a child's tantrum. And then, a heartbeat later, the quantum resonance cannon fired, a lance of pure energy streaking across the battlefield. It struck the heart of the Zorath fleet, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the Zorath ships began to drift, their lights flickering and dying. The hive mind had been severed, the Eldari technology weaving its magic through the cannon's blast. On the bridge of the Terran flagship, the President watched in stunned silence as the Zorath fleet crumbled, their ships floating dead in space. The Komar rebels pressed the attack, mopping up the remaining pockets of resistance. It was over. Against all odds, they had won. But the cost had been high, so many lives lost, so much destruction. And out there, amid the wreckage of the Zorath flagship, Maverick knew that some of the bravest soldiers he had ever known had made the ultimate sacrifice. He bowed his head, grief and triumph warring in his heart. They had saved Earth, saved the galaxy. But the scars of this war would linger long after the last shot had been fired. In the NASA command center, Tyler slumped back in his chair, exhaustion and relief etched onto his face. They had done it. The cannon had worked. But as he looked around at the jubilant faces of his team, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Voyager 3 data had revealed a galaxy full of wonders and terrors, a universe far vaster and more complex than they had ever imagined. Earth had taken its first steps into a larger cosmos, and there would be no going back. On the bridge of the Komar rebel flagship, Sire-Father and Admiral Shu watched the viewscreen in tense silence as the Zorath flagship erupted into a blinding fireball. The explosion consumed the massive vessel, debris spiraling out into the void. "Maverick, come in!" Admiral Shu barked into the comm. "Maverick, do you read me?" Static crackled over the channel, seconds stretching into an eternity. Then a voice broke through, strained but alive. "Admiral, this is Maverick. We made it out, but just barely. The self-destruct sequence, we disabled it at the last possible second." Relief flooded the bridge, the crew erupting into cheers. But the celebration was short-lived as Maverick's battered ship limped into view, scorched and venting atmosphere. It looked like it could barely hold itself together. Get them on board now, Admiral Shu ordered, and prep the medbay, they're going to need it. As Maverick's ship docked, Tyler Cooper's face appeared on the comm screen, his expression a mix of excitement and urgency. Admiral, the cannon is ready. The Eldari tech is fully integrated. We just need your order to fire. Admiral Shu glanced at Sire Father, who nodded solemnly. Do it, the Admiral said. Let's end this. On the view screen, the quantum resonance cannon swiveled into position, its barrel glowing with an eerie blue light. Then, with a flash that lit up the void, it fired, a massive burst of energy streaking towards the Zorath fleet. The effect was instantaneous. The Zorath ships shuddered, their formations falling into disarray as the Eldari technology disrupted their hive mind. Some vessels simply went dark, drifting lifelessly. Others veered off course, crashing into each other in a cascade of destruction. All ships engage, Admiral Shu shouted. Press the attack. The Earth and Komar rebel forces surged forward, their weapons tearing into the crippled Zorath fleet. Explosions bloomed across the battlefield as ship after ship fell to the onslaught. But just as victory seemed assured, a new wave of contacts appeared on the sensors. Another Zorath fleet, just as large as the first, dropped out of hyperspace on the edge of the battle. Sire Father's face fell, realization dawning. The Komar leadership, they must have betrayed us. They told the Zorath about the reserve fleet. The tide of battle turned in an instant. The fresh Zorath ships tore into the beleaguered human and rebel forces, their renewed hive-mind coordination giving them a devastating advantage. The Earth ships were the first to fall, their hulls crumpling under the onslaught. On the flagship bridge, alarms blared and sparks flew as consoles overloaded. Admiral Shu gripped the command chair, knuckles white. "Cooper, we need that cannon recharged now!" In the cannon's control room, Tyler worked frantically, his fingers flying over the controls. "I'm trying. The capacitors are still drained from the first shot. We need more time." Time they didn't have. The Zorath ships closed in, their weapons hammering the flagship's failing shields. Maverick and his team, still battered from their narrow escape, stumbled onto the bridge, ready to fight to the last. But just as all seemed lost, a new voice crackled over the comm, a voice that sent a chill down every spine. "We are the Eldari, and we have come to honor our ancient alliance with humanity. Let us fight together and put an end to the Zorath threat once and for all." On the view screen, a massive fleet of alien ships dropped out of hyperspace, their sleek hulls glinting in the starlight. They moved with a grace and precision that put even the Komar to shame, sliding into formation alongside the battered Earth and rebel ships. A cheer went up from the human and Komar crews as the Eldari opened fire, their weapons cutting through the Zorath fleet like a scythe through wheat. The tide turned once more, the combined might of three races pushing back against the darkness. Admiral Shu leaned forward in his chair, a fierce grin spreading across his face. "All ships, form up on the Eldari. Let's finish this." And with that, the final assault began, a desperate charge into the heart of the Zorath lines. It was a battle that would be remembered for generations, a shining moment when the races of the galaxy stood together against a common foe. But even as the first Zorath ships began to fall, even as hope kindled anew in the hearts of the defenders, a dark shadow fell over the battlefield. A shape emerged from the depths of space, vast and terrible, dwarfing even the mightiest of the Eldari vessels. It was a Zorath super-dreadnought, a behemoth of unimaginable power, and as it turned its weapons on the Allied fleet, the true scale of the fight ahead became clear. This was no longer a battle for Earth, or even for the fate of a single galaxy. This was a war for the very soul of the universe itself, and it was only just beginning. As the quantum resonance cannon unleashed its final devastating shot, the scene on Earth's surface was one of utter chaos. Massive Zorath warships darkened the skies, disgorging endless hordes of heavily armed warriors into the heart of humanity's cities. The streets echoed with the deafening roar of energy weapons and the screams of the dying. Colonel Jake Pitbull Andrews, Maverick's old friend and rival, led the desperate defense, his face grim as he barked orders to his beleaguered troops. They fought with every ounce of strength and courage they possessed, but the Zorath's superior numbers and technology were slowly but surely overwhelming them. "We can't hold them," a soldier cried, his voice raw with desperation. "There's too many." Pitbull gritted his teeth, his grip tightening on his pulse rifle. He knew they were on the verge of being overrun, but surrender was not an option, not while there was still breath in his body. "Deploy the nanobots," he ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "It's our last chance." Moments later, a swarm of microscopic machines, developed from technology reverse-engineered from the Voyager 3 probe, flooded the battlefield. They infiltrated the Zorath soldiers' cybernetic implants, causing them to twitch and convulse as their own systems turned against them. For a brief shining moment, it seemed like the tide might turn. The Zorath warriors began to attack each other in a frenzy of destruction, their formations shattering under the onslaught of their own maddened troops. But Pitbull's triumph was short-lived. To his horror, he saw his own men begin to fall, their bodies writhing as the nanobots, unable to distinguish friend from foe, attacked human and Komar rebel soldiers alike. "No!" Pitbull screamed, watching helplessly as the very weapon he had unleashed consumed his own troops. "Shut it down! Shut it all down!" But it was too late. The nanobots, once released, could not be recalled. Pitbull could only watch as the battle descended into a nightmarish melee, human and Zorath alike falling victim to the uncaring swarm. Above the Earth, the battle raged on with unabated fury. The quantum resonance cannon fired shot after shot into the Zorath fleet, each blast a miniature sun that consumed ships by the dozen. The Eldari vessels danced through the chaos, their sleek forms darting and weaving as they outmaneuvered the Zorath at every turn. But for every ship that fell, it seemed like two more took its place. The Zorath were relentless, throwing themselves against the Allied forces with a single-minded determination to exterminate all opposition. In the command center of the Terran flagship, Tyler Cooper watched the readouts with a growing sense of despair. The cannon's power levels were dropping fast, the strain of the prolonged battle taking its toll. "Admiral Sue," he said, his voice urgent, "we have only one shot left. After that, the cannon will be depleted." Admiral Shu's face was lined with fatigue, but his eyes blazed with unbreakable resolve. He knew what he had to do. "Helm," he ordered, "set a course for the Zorath command ship. We're going in." As the small fleet of Allied ships, Maverick's team among them, raced towards the heart of the Zorath armada, a familiar face appeared on the view screen. It was Sire-Father, looking battered but unbowed. "Admiral," he said, his voice crackling with static, "I have sabotaged the command ship's defenses, but I've been discovered. You must fire the cannon now before it's too late." Admiral Shu hesitated, torn between his duty and his friendship. "But Sire-Father, you'll be—" "The fate of the galaxy is more important than any one life," Sire-Father insisted, his eyes fierce. "Do it, Admiral. Give the order." Admiral Shu closed his eyes, the weight of the moment bearing down on him like a physical force. Then, with a heavy heart, he nodded to Tyler. "Fire the cannon." The quantum resonance cannon unleashed its final devastating blast, the energy lance spearing through the void to pierce the heart of the Zorath command ship. For a moment, the battlefield fell still, every eye fixed on the blinding explosion as the enemy flagship disintegrated into a billion glowing shards. Then, as the light faded, a ragged cheer went up from the battered remnants of the Allied fleet. Against all odds, they had done it. The Zorath were defeated. But as the ships limped their way back to Earth, the cost of victory became clear. Millions were dead, entire cities reduced to rubble. The once mighty Voyager 3 probe, humanity's greatest achievement, was nothing more than drifting debris. And the quantum resonance cannon, their last desperate gambit, had burned itself out in that final cataclysmic shot. As they entered Earth's orbit, a new contact appeared on their sensors, a Komar ship heavily damaged but still functional, and on board, clinging to life by a thread, was Sire-Father. Admiral Shu and Tyler Cooper rushed to the Komar's side as he was carried from the airlock on a stretcher, his body broken and bleeding. The medics worked frantically to stabilize him, but it was clear his wounds were mortal. With his last breath, Sire-Father beckoned them closer, his voice a ragged whisper. The Zorath, they were not alone, merely pawns in a larger game. The Xel'Naga, an empire vaster and more terrible than you can imagine, they were behind it all. Tyler shook his head in disbelief. But why? What do they want? To test you. To find the strongest, the most resilient. They set the Zorath upon 100 worlds and you survived. You, the Komar, the Eldari, you have proven yourselves worthy foes. Sire-Father coughed, a trickle of blood running from his mouth. And now, they will come for you. His eyes fluttered shut, his breath rattling in his chest. The medics pushed Tyler and the Admiral aside, fighting to bring him back from the brink. But it was too late. Sire-Father, the enigmatic alien who had been both enemy and ally, was gone. On the planet below, Colonel Andrews and his surviving troops battled to contain the nanobot swarm. Cut off from their Zorath controllers, the machines had run amok, replicating out of control, consuming everything in their path. Pitbull gritted his teeth as he watched the tactical display, the red stain of the nanobots spreading across the continent. There was only one option left, one final, terrible recourse. Evacuate the infected zones, he ordered, his voice leaden. Then burn them, burn it all. His officers nodded grimly, their faces ashen. They knew what he was asking, to sacrifice millions to save billions, to consign entire cities teeming with innocent life to the nuclear fire. But they had no choice. The alternative was unthinkable. As the warheads fell and the skies burned with the unholy light of 1,000 suns, Pitbull could only watch in silence, his heart heavy with the weight of the dead. They had won, yes, but the price had been too high. In the depths of space, Maverick and his battered team of survivors received the transmission. It came from an unknown source, on a frequency they had never seen before, and when they decrypted it, the message made their blood run cold. Congratulations, it read, on your victory. You have proven yourselves worthy adversaries, worthy perhaps to join our empire as valued servants, or to die, as all who oppose us must. It was signed simply the Xel'Naga. Maverick stared out at the stars, at the infinite darkness that suddenly seemed filled with new and terrible threats. They had beaten the Zorath, but that, it seemed, had only been the beginning. The true fight, the war for the very soul of the galaxy, that was just beginning. The screen faded to black, leaving only questions and the cold, lonely light of distant stars. Humanity had won its greatest victory, but in doing so, it had drawn the attention of something far older and far more dangerous than it had ever imagined. The universe, it seemed, was a far darker and more deadly place than they had ever known, and Earth, for all its struggles and triumphs, was but a small piece on a much larger board, the game already in motion, the stakes beyond comprehension. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.